So in our scripture reading today, we hear the prophet Micah speaking to people who are asking how they can be closer to God. Now, Micah lived at a time when things were not so bad for the people in the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. They were in control of their own lands. Nobody had come just yet to conquer them, or recently in any case. And there were, in fact, a lot of very religious people moving around at the time. And when that happens, often there's different understandings of what it looks like to be especially religious, to follow God closely and to be near to God. And so this question arises with, what should I approach the Lord? How do I bring myself closer to God? Should I come with entirely burnt offerings, with thousands of rams and more oil than I would know what to do with? Should I give my oldest child? What can I do to come closer? What does God require of me? And Micah responds that, in fact, God has told us what is good, what is required of us. And it's three things. Not simple things maybe, but three things: to do justice, to embrace faithful love, to walk humbly with God. Now, this scripture reading came about, or it was picked for today in any case, because our Midler class studied it. It was their most recent Bible story that they learned about. Now, our Midler class, which is sort of the older elementary kids in our congregation, has tried a new thing this year. Instead of going to Sunday school every week and learning about a different story, they've been on a sort of monthly schedule, where the first week of the month they learn about a story or about a passage of scripture. And for the weeks after that, often they're with us here in worship, learning about what it looks like on a Sunday morning when we worship God together. And then usually at the end of the month, we do some sort of mission or service project that's related to the story we learned about. So over the course of this year, our Midler group has packed backpacks full of resources for folks returning from incarceration, made 100 bagged lunches to go to Common Cathedral, which is an outdoor ministry for unhoused folks in Boston. They've made compassion packs to give out to folks. They've hosted fellowship hour downstairs and made sure that everybody got served. And most recently, with this passage, we spent some time learning about the fair trade movement and enjoyed some, I will say, extremely good fair trade chocolate in class. That may have been a class favorite, I don't know. But part of what we talked about when we were learning about this passage is, and the way Micah presents it, it also seems very simple. No, you don't need thousands of rams or torrents of oil or multitude of burnt offerings. These days it is a little harder, in fact, to find a year-old calf easily, or at least a bunch of them. And Micah almost seems to present that it is like these three simple things that you have to do. But as we got to talking about what it actually meant in these three things, it got a little more complicated. What does it mean to seek justice? To love kindness, or what we would say, and back in Vacation Bible School, we talked more about this, to practice loving kindness and to walk humbly with God. So if I can, I'd like to share with you some of the brainstorm that came from this class on what each of these means. So when we talked about seeking justice, we talked about things that could be as easy as sharing your cupcakes with other people, making sure that everybody got a cupcake. But also things like fairness and equity, about fighting for what's right. And that when things are unjust or wrong in the world, that part of what we're called to do when we seek justice is to help turn those things around so that they're made right for the people who are experiencing them. They talked about justice being people being able to go to the doctor, about having a place to sleep at night that's safe, about having enough. And not just for some people, but for everyone. I like this vision of justice that our young folks have come up with. But this justice, in fact, is actually a collaborative effort that we are all called into. So I want to create some space for us all to think about what justice could look like. So you may have noticed there are a bunch of Post-it notes on your pews and some pens, which I promise is not just because we forgot to clean up. We're going to try something a little interactive today in our sermon. So if you could, find yourself one of the yellow-green Post-it notes. You didn't know there was going to be a fun search component of this. And if you don't have one, maybe somebody in a nearby pew could help share with you. So look for those yellow-green Post-it notes. All right, grab a pen if you can. And I want you to take a moment and think about this world that surrounds us, whether it's this local community here in Brockton, or the community that you live in, or maybe even someplace that's far away from here. I want you, if it feels comfortable, to close your eyes for a moment and to think about what it would look like in those places if we sought a more just world. What could justice look like? And as that picture starts to form in your head, I want you to think about what could we do as a community, as people who are called into this work of seeking justice, as a church community, as individuals of faith. What would it look like for us to seek justice together? And as that comes to you, I invite you to write it down on your Post-it note. And if you don't want to write it, you can draw it. It doesn't have to be a complete sentence. It could be a few words. I'll tell you in a moment. So as I continue, I invite you to keep writing as ideas come to you. But I want to talk a little bit about what it looks like to practice loving kindness. We studied this at Vacation Bible School this year, and we learned that it has to do with compassion. We even had a whole chant that went with it, some of you might remember. It involved like loving kindness, loving kindness. And our middlers had this to say about what loving kindness looks like. They said it involves showing goodness to others. That it can be someone showed them loving kindness by helping them get ready for school in the morning, or making them food, or that they showed it to others by making food for others, making sure that people have food, caring for people, and of course, hugs. And this is a beautiful vision of loving kindness. And again, I want to invite us all into a space where we can think about what loving kindness looks like for us. So if you could find the blue Post-it note in your pew. I want you to take a minute and think about a way that you can show loving kindness to someone. Whether it's today or this week, someone that you know in your life or someone that you meet on the street. And as you start to think about what that could be, I invite you to write that down or draw it. How will you practice loving kindness in this world? This world that does not have nearly enough loving kindness. And again, please feel free to keep writing. I'd love to tell you a little bit about when we talked about walking humbly with God. Our midlers said that walking humbly with God looks like being in relationship with God and trying to follow God's teachings, to live like God asks us to live. And most importantly, walking humbly with God means recognizing that we can't do everything by ourselves. That we can't seek justice and get to the place where we want to and need to get, that we can't have unending wells of loving kindness unless we have God working with us, supporting us, guiding us, and teaching us. That walking humbly with God means being in relationship as we try to seek justice and practice loving kindness in this world. So I want to invite you to find your pinkish red Post-it notes in your pews and take a moment and think about what walking humbly with God could mean for you. What would it look like for you to walk humbly with God on this journey of faith? Friends, I invite you to keep writing and even to continue writing through this service as ideas come to you. But for now and in this moment, I want to invite you to take your Post-it notes and bring them up onto our poster boards here. And if you forget which goes with which, the colors are a helpful reminder. So the yellow-green with the yellow-green, the blue with the blue, the pink with the red. And in fact, I think if you were someone who that might be tricky for, our younger folks are going to come around and help carry up Post-it notes to be put onto the poster boards. So if you'd like, you could hold yours up and a younger folks might come and help you bring them up to the front.